2024 is wrapping up, and that can only mean one thing. It is time for my annual Best Films of the Year list. Yes, and as you can see from my hat, watching sports in Chicago was not the best option, so I was able to see even more movies than before. Now, if you're new around here, please welcome. And I always start these by listing 5 honorable mentions and then getting into the top 10. 2024 as a whole felt like a very ambitious follow-up to the return to the movies that 2023 was hailed to be. Very reflective, meditative, mature, and overall audacious films from established filmmakers and new voices alike. And starting with the 5 honorable mentions, we have Robert Zemeckis is Here, Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis, Jeff Nichols' The Bike Riders, Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 2, and Yorgos Lanthimos' Kinds of Kindness. All terrific films that nearly cracked the top 10, but this year was a tight race, and let's get into it. Starting off with number 10 is Close Your Eyes by Victor Erice. He's a director that I found this year, in part to this being his first film in 30 years. This is the only one that I've seen from him thus far, but it's magnificent. This is a Spanish film about an aging director named Miguel that is recounting the events of his final film that was unfinished and never released due to its lead actor and the director's best friend, Julio, mysteriously disappearing. Because of this, he never made a film again and essentially became a hermit. But once a TV program begins to reinvestigate this case, Miguel slowly reconnects with the film's crew, past lovers, and Julio's daughter. What I love most about this film is just how tender and calm Erice directs each scene, even though it's constantly multi-layered. The opening scene is a perfect example of this, with the fictional film's footage intertwining with the film that we are watching with just such confident ease. It raises questions about our relationships with cinema, with each other, and with ourselves, in part to Erice's experience as a director, and just a beautifully subdued performance from its lead, Manolo Solo. Close Your Eyes is currently available via digital, and I highly recommend renting it. At number 9 is A Different Man by Aaron Schimberg. The film follows Edward, portrayed by career best Sebastian Stan, who has a genetic disorder that causes tumors to grow on nerves that is called neurofibromatosis. And Edward decides to go through a radical surgery that will transform his appearance into his quote-unquote dream face. Now, relieved from this condition, Edward decides to act in a play about someone that is quite literally him with the same condition. He goes down a psychological rabbit hole of insecurity once he meets Oswald, portrayed by a scene-stealing Adam Pearson, who is a real actor with the real condition and is flourishing. He's confident, he's funny, and just the kind of guy that you can have a beer with. And when Edward sees this, it truly eats him up and gives us a classic grass is always greener on the other side protagonist that digs himself into a coffin of madness. It's a brilliant and complicated analysis of these unrealistic expectations we place on ourselves, and in doing so, how it leads to a physical and mental destruction. Stan and Pearson are an outstanding duo, and A Different Man will be streaming on Max January 17th. Number 8 is Juror No. 2 by Clint Eastwood. It asks the question, what would you do if you were in the jury for a crime that you committed? And lays you in this unnerving feeling for 2 hours. And how this film is structured and set up is just so smart and effective. It reminded me how time efficient and economical that Eastwood really is as a director. And it really deepened my admiration for these mid-budget films. And I hope that studios follow the reception of this and make more like it. However, how Warner Brothers has handled operations in the last few years, who really knows? And leading man, Nicholas Hoult, had a career year, and this is my favorite performance from him, with the guilt sinking in more and more as the film goes on. And it just ends on a gut punch that will surely start conversations with whoever you watch it with. Juror No. 2 is now streaming on Max. Number 7 is Furiosa by George Miller. It's no secret that I love Fury Road, and as the years have passed, I have truly appreciated seeing Miller's work and the wasteland world that he created. Furiosa is a wide expansion of all of his work and the foundation laid in Fury Road. The way it is paced allows for this free-spirited exploration of the wasteland. It's patient and allows Miller to construct an emotionally rich epic with amazing work from Anya Taylor-Joy, Chris Hemsworth, and Alila Brown. This world viewing love as a valuable commodity is a beautiful testament to the human experience, and I think Furiosa is an exceptional look at how far love will get you. If this is the inhale, Fury Road is the exhale. Furiosa is now streaming on Max. At number 6, we have Anora from Sean Baker. It's a surefire Oscar nominee. I'm sure you've all heard about it by now, but it's really a tremendous film about Ani, a young sex worker who marries the son of a Russian oligarch, and what happens once his family finds out. And for as upfront as everything is in Anora, each segment is just so multi-layered and demands so much from its lead, Mikey Madison, who is outstanding. I wish I could watch this again for the first time because she is jaw-droppingly good. It borrows a lot from both classical and contemporary Hollywood films, with cat and mouse chases, slapstick, and screwball comedy, tight and claustrophobic stressors which are similar to Uncut Gems, and it's constantly elevating its stakes until it crashes down to reality in quite possibly the most heart-wrenching way possible. It's one of those films where you're in for the ride but unaware of where we're going, but once you get there, you're stunned that it's over. But now that it's done, it suddenly all makes sense. And I'm sure I've quoted it before, but the saying, the best films begin once the credits roll, has never been more true than for something like Anora. Anora is in theaters now and on digital as well. At number 5 is Challengers by Luca Guadagnino. I have yet to see Queer. I've heard great things, but Luca has really become such a fun talent to follow. Every project he picks feels so distinct and unique, but also himself. And once you watch it, you can see his signature and his handprints all over it. But Challengers is really something else. It has a new sound from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, a sound I never even knew they were capable of making, camera techniques that have seemed untouched in the last decade, an edit that is so motivated, and a trio that is so hard to look away from, including Mike Faced, Josh O'Connor, and Zendaya. They're all remarkable and tie this escapade of sex and tennis all together. There's underlying fears of aging and indecisiveness within this that struck hard, and I think gets thrown under everything because of how fun the rest of this is. And it's unbelievable, the run that Luca is on right now. I'm excited to see what he does next. Challengers is streaming on Prime Video. 4 is Perfect Days by Wim Wenders, a joyous examination of everyday life told from the point of view of a toilet cleaner. It's simple on the surface, but as each day passes, we learn more about Koji Yakusha's character, Hirayama. It's repetitive but for a purpose. We watch him wake up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, bathe, jam to Lou Reed like anyone else does, drive to work, and of course, clean toilets. Koji's performance is what this film relies on, and he delivers impeccably. A smile so warm and eyes so vulnerable, we'd be foolish to not want to see what he does next. Hirayama treats all life with so much respect, and there's meaning to everything he does, which really spoke to me when I watched this, especially his care and love for physical media. Perfect Days is now streaming on Hulu. Coming in at number 3 is The Brutalist by Brady Corbet. This one is, it's so overwhelming to talk about, but I would definitely try my best. After a visionary architect flees post-war Europe, he must rebuild his life, his work, and his marriage. And then he meets a wealthy industrialist who commissions him to a massive project, and from there, conflicts of power and legacy arise. If you haven't heard, The Brutalist essentially revived the VistaVision format that hasn't been used since the 1960s to tell its sprawling story, and within its 215-minute runtime, The Brutalist also contains an intermission. Everything about this film that is being advertised is true. It is so monumental. I had no idea something like this can still be made, and most importantly, commercially appealing to audiences. Adrian Brody gives such an astounding performance and carries it the entire runtime, as does Guy Pearce and Felicity Jones. It has the best score of the year without a doubt, and successfully constructs, devotes, and critiques this myth that we hail as the American dream. I still have so many thoughts that I'd like to add, but that'll be for after I rewatch it my next time. The Brutalist is in theaters this January. There's a lot of different dates because A24's release model is a bit weird, but for my fellow Chicagoans, it'll be releasing January 10th at the Music Box Theater in 70mm. Worth it to see it on the biggest screen possible and support this one. At number 2 is Trap by M. Night Shyamalan. It's truly unreal, and I did not expect to love this one so much, but Trap is marvelous. It starts as this paranoia-filled thriller, borrowing elements from Hitchcock and De Palma before something darker and more twisted that I never thought that M. Night Shyamalan had in him. And none of this would be possible if not for a convincingly complicated performance by Josh Hartnett, whose character Cooper is so detached from reality, whether it be in his eye movements or in just a weird conversation that he has with any other person. And once he realizes that this concert is a ploy to capture him, he does whatever it takes to not be caught and for his daughter to not see the kind of monster that he is. And once we leave the concert, Cooper is forced to face his demons at home, which is when the film gets super interesting. We see Cooper's greatest fear are these two sort of lives merging, and in a lot of ways, it's very poetic for Shyamalan to have his daughter actually in this film and performing. It really just pushes that theme even further about how far a parent would go to protect their child. And just overall, it's it's a blast. It's hilarious, and overall, it's really devastating. Everything a 2024 Hollywood blockbuster can be. Excited to see what Hartnett does next because he rules in here. Trapped is now streaming on Max. And we are now at number 1, folks. Coming in at number 1 is La Chimera by Alice Rohrwacher. Out of every 2024 release, La Chimera was always just a step ahead, always in a higher place on the shelf for me. Rohrwacher is in a class of her own, creating this world and rules with ease, and it feels as if she is creating her own cinematic language as time goes on. On paper, La Chimera is about an English archaeologist who was just released from jail as he reconnects with his old crew of grave robbers. And if that sounds awesome, that's because it is. It gets absurd, ridiculous even, but it all works within this world created. But once we are sort of released out of this daze, the back half explores class status even more, ecology, and grief. Loss is at the forefront of all of this, and a reminder that clinging to the past will always be your demise. And similar to Furiosa, it grapples with finding a life worth living after love has fled. La Chimera is why we go to the movies and why we fall in love with young talents like Josh O'Connor, and it is currently streaming on Hulu. And just like that, another year has passed with a lot of incredible films within it. I've seen a lot of chatter online this week about this year being a big step down from last year's roster of films, which I have to disagree with. I saw so many films this year from established prestige filmmakers and also a lot of newcomers. And from both sides, I saw a lot of people testing the water, seeing what worked and what didn't work. And ultimately, I felt like this year I saw growth in this art form, which is always so exciting. So I always remind myself there's no such thing as a bad year for movies, it's just a bad year of looking for the right stuff. The stars won't always align, the puzzle pieces won't always fit, but maybe someday it will, maybe someday it won't, and that's what's exciting about this art form. There is growth in it, and I see it growing. And this week I'll be starting my first venture out to Los Angeles for the first time and seeing how this industry works just a little bit more, which is really exciting for someone who loves movies so much. And I thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope that 2025 is a good one for you all. Thank you.